And as usual, the first thing we'll cover is our antitrust policy. This policy is important where we've got multiple companies, including potential industry competitors, participating in these meetings. Please review it. If you have any questions, contact your company's legal counsel. Members of the LF may also contact Andrew Updegrove at the firm Gesmer Updegrove LLP. This policy is in place whether there's a member of LF staff on the call or not. And I just dropped the link to the policy right there, and we will go back to the meeting. Let's see who joined while I was there. Foley. Hi, Foley.
Hello, everybody.
Okay. Don't think we've got anyone new on the call today. Going to have a update on the CICD work group, and I'm sorry I don't attend those meetings at 5 a.m. is just too early. Confirmation and announcement for the contribution guide working group that Sandy is leading. Presentation on the requirements that have been submitted for the demo UI, and then a preview of the roadmap. Is there anything else anyone would like to add? Okay, let's go ahead then with the CICD. I don't see Scott on the line. Justice, will you be leading that?
I will not. Let's pass that for now. Scott might just be running late.
Okay.
So we can come back to CICD at the end.
Sounds good. Sandy, turn it over to you.
Great. So we have confirmed the start date for the contribution guide working group. That kickoff meeting will be held on the 13th of February at 5 p.m. We are planning to alternate that with TSC meetings. So yeah, I have sent out a link to the Miro board with the suggestions and the links to the existing contribution guide. So we'll kick that process off next week.
Do you want to, if it's convenient, can you drop the link to the Miro board into the?
Yeah, I will do.
Into
I think
the
I
chat
did
for me?
link it to last week's as well, but I'll link it again.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
Okay, any questions, any updates that? Okay, demo UI, who will be taking this one?
That's also me.
Okay.
If I can...
Do you want me to stop the share? Yeah.
Yeah, please.
There you go.
There we go.
Looks good.
Great. This is enhancements that were specified for the Tazama UI. That requirement spec has gone out for proposal. The existing demo UI was released in Q3 last year, and subsequent to that version of the demo UI, we implemented release 2.1.0 in Q4, which had event flow, or what we're calling FRAP functionality. And natively, the demo UI in its current form doesn't work correctly with FRAP. So enhancements to the demo UI are required to take into account this new functionality for event flow. There are three main components for that. So the first is condition management. So we're adding blocking and override conditions, which we need to be able to add to the UI. We need to add the FRAP rules and typologies, as well as then reflecting different results based on the outcome of the FRAP functionality. And then there were a couple of other minor enhancements that I'll just talk through. So for conditions, we need to be able to create conditions for accounts and entities. These are mock-up screens that we put together as part of our requirements specification. So there will be a UI design process. So it'll look something like this, but probably not exactly like this. The idea being that we need to be able to create conditions and then view a list of conditions for either an entity or an account, and then update the expiry date to be able to expire a condition that is still active. So that's condition management. And then at a glance, we want to be able to see immediately on the demo UI where there are conditions, active conditions on either an entity or account. So on the list of debtors, being able to see which account, so if it's gray, there are no active conditions on the second and third account, but being able to see that on the entity as well as on the account, which is then replicated here. So the requirement is to be able to see where are the conditions so that when you're using the demo, you know where you can expect a different result. So the event flow block condition, the way it will work is it will result in a block outcome. So the TAD proc, we need to know that there was a block condition and it resulted in interdiction alert. So the stop sign would be displayed. So irrespective of what the typology outcomes were, a block will result in a block transaction and a stop sign. And then for an override, it's possible to override a specific typology, in which case, when you look at the typology results, we need an alert or some way to know that even though the typology score exceeded or equaled the interdiction threshold, there was an override, and this would allow the transaction to go through and not be interdicted, even though the TAD proc outcome would have shown alert, a warning, or some kind of way of indicating that the interdiction was overridden and the transaction would have gone through. Other enhancements, if you've played with the demo UI, you would have seen after you've done a whole bunch of transactions, decided to be quite nice to be able to just refresh and start with a blank screen again. We wanted to streamline the editing of entity and account information. So at the moment, there's only an edit button on the left next to the debtor and creditor panel, and we decided to ask for a little edit button so that it's easier. You could either just click on the name of the account or the entity, or the little edit button to pop open the edit window. And then the rule LEDs, the way it works now, when you submit a transaction, the rule LEDs all immediately go green, and then subsequent to the result being returned, they change to red or gray or green, depending on whether they returned a result. So there's a minor change requested to say that the lights shouldn't go green initially. They should stay gray and only change when the result is returned. I can demo that if we like. Then there's a minor bug. I tested a configuration where there was an interdiction alert, but no alert threshold. So the interdiction threshold, the buttons work and the LEDs work correctly. But in the case where there's no alert threshold, the LED for the typology will show green when it should be showing red. So really minor thing. And then there's a complex scenario around the fact that different typologies could have different weightings for the same rule. At the moment, this is not the case. The way in which the default Tazama configuration is that each rule has the same score relating to multiple typologies. But what we're wanting to reflect as a requirement is that in this example here, rule 10 could have a weighting of 100 for typology 3, 100 for typology 28, and 200 for topology 185. So in other words, the result is not always the same, and we need to be able to show that distinction. And then we also want to be able to, in this example, if we're looking at typology 185, we're wanting to be able to see that rule 10 contributed a weighting of 200 and rule 11 contributed a weighting of 300 without necessarily having to click on every single rule. So just making this easier to visualize. Right, any questions?
Rob has a question.
Yep.
Rob.
So yeah, I just had a question on the UI. Is it going to pull those weightings from the typology config?
Yes.
Cool.
It
Okay, so
currently
whatever is in
pulls
the
it.
back end, it's going to pull
Yes.
that. Yeah, cool.
It works like that now, but like I say, we haven't actually tested it with a configuration with different topologies having a different weighting for the same rule. But yes, that would come out of the config.
Great, thank you.
Just a request from my side as well. As you are using the demo UI, I suspect more and more people will now start using it. It does work with the current version of Tazama as long as you don't deploy the condition management component. But if you are using the demo UI and you come across any additional sort of features or things that you think might be missing or enhancements that you'd like to see in it, please log those in the user interface repository on GitHub. And then we could also consider those for future enhancements to the demo UI as well. We found that it is an exceptionally useful tool in showing the system's capabilities and visually explaining to people how rules and typologies are handled. So please, if you have any additional feedback, do let us know. Alrighty, no other comments.
Hey.
Kenny, I guess that's back to you.
I've got
Oh,
a quick
Michelle, it's
question.
probably back to
Sorry.
me. Yeah.
Were those
Detmar.
configs, were those configurations set up differently, basically with different weightings on the rule for different typologies? Is there going to be any data structure changes there? Or is it just going to be a list of
Oh, no changes to the data structure. So at the moment,
it
the
remains
mapping
a-
between the rule result and the typology score is handled in the typology processor, and the structure of that configuration file is still going to be the same.
Okay, no, that's great. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. That's such a cool, such a great app.
Thanks, Kenny.
Okay, the next thing we've got up is the 2025 roadmap.
Hey, I guess that's me. So well done to Sandy for using our new branded template. You may have noticed it. I unfortunately did not use the new branded template yet, so I hang my head in shame. This is still the old template. Maybe just a quick recap. So Tazama started its development journey in 2021 officially. We started with a proof of concept for the Mojaloop community, and the concept was ratified after about 3 months. We did our first set of sort of rules and typologies to showcase the system capabilities. And then we went into a build phase, which resulted in the release of version 1, our MVP release, in April of 2022. So that is now almost 3 years ago. So 2 years? I don't know. 2 to 3, 3 to 4. Yeah. A very long time that we have been working on the
It's
system.
3 this year.
We then went, sorry?
It is 3 this year.
Yeah, 3 this year. It does feel like a very significant part of my life. And then in a year later, we released version 1.1 of the system, where we had some initial Nuxio integration, which was a open source case management system at the time. It was a more or less full-featured case management system, but we had to fork our own version of it, which we weren't too keen to maintain. So Nuxio integration itself did not survive through beyond that point, but we did try. We also then, as one of the first activities to start our performance benchmarking project, we removed NiFi. NiFi was somewhat misplaced in our architecture and not used for the purposes that our architects had originally envisioned. And we optimized the system to 100 transactions per second, which was a little far off from our initial stated target. We then worked through that up to the end of 2023. We released 1.2, which was our release just before we joined the Linux Foundation, which implemented a number of mostly performance enhancements for the system. And then once we joined the Linux Foundation, we started to add a lot more features on top of the system as well, and then completed the performance benchmarking and laid the foundation for community contribution in the system. And then, as we've reported before, in December last year, we released version 2.1.0 of the system, which added API security functionality, the list management functionality, which Sandy also discussed in her presentation, egress relay service to streamline communication out of the system, multi-currency support if you wanted to build multi-currency rules to evaluate cross-border transactions, and then the demo UI itself. So that left us with the question of, where do we go to from here? We think at the moment Tazama is in a very good place as a product that is viable and feasible and desirable by people who need an open source transaction monitoring system. It is a complete product which offers a lot of the functionality that somebody would need to be able to do transaction monitoring. So what we are considering then is, what is our strategy, right? And in a nutshell, what we want to be able to do is we want to automate more of our core functions and processes so that the system ultimately costs less, measured across a number of different metrics. So we want to automate our implementation tasks. We want to focus more on configuration processes over development processes, and see if there are opportunities to be able to use AI to improve and automate some of the operations and decision-making in the system to minimize the amount of time that actual people have to spend with their hands on the system to keep the system, we get the system up and running, and then keep the system going in the second place. And with this, we hope to reduce the implementation costs so that the system is quicker and easier to implement. We want to reduce the maintenance and support costs by giving people the tools to manage the system without having to rely too much on either external resources or internal resources to hold the system's hand all the time. We want to reduce the cost of infrastructure, which would also mean improving the effective use of system resources. We did do our first round of performance benchmarking, which took us to 2,700 odd evaluations per second. We do want to go even bigger than that. And by going bigger than that, we also want to simultaneously give you the opportunity to reduce the cost of your infrastructure. So in that balance between performance and cost, we want to see if we can shift the pivot a little bit more towards the left. And then ultimately also reduce the requirements for staffing costs. In one of our earlier studies that we did for Tazama, the highest cost of any operations of a fraud management system and a fraud management approach or program is the staff that are required to do your investigations and to manage the workflows that come out of the system at the end. So what we hope to be able to do is to make our processes, our investigation processes, and our case management processes automated and as efficient as possible so that you don't have to have teams and teams of people to manage fraud alerts and money laundering alerts that come out of the system at the end. These strategic imperatives or our drive to automate more and cost less then delivered for us a roadmap which involves these activities. So these are split across two major channels, I suppose. At the moment, Tazama has spent quite a bit of our budget on developing features internally, having contracted for those features amongst our pool of system integrators. We would like to shift the focus of that kind of development more towards upcoming implementations. And we're quite lucky that we do have quite a few implementations in our pipeline at the moment that we hope will deliver some of the features that we are looking for to improve the system, because simultaneously the customers that are implementing Tazama also require those specific improvements. And then there are a couple of things where we don't have a home for those features yet, but those are some essential features that we feel Tazama could benefit from to make the system even more desirable in the market. So some things that we think the system absolutely has to have at some point, and in the absence of finding somebody who wants to implement the system and then still simultaneously needs that feature, we may have to secure funding from somewhere else to be able to build those features. So just to quickly go over these in summary. Smart event routing, we also had on our previous roadmap. That may come out of an upcoming implementation, but we don't have certainty around that yet. What the smart event routing does is it will allow Tazama to route transactions to rule processors and typology processors based on multiple attributes in the transaction and not just the transaction type as it currently does. So that's a feature which will be a major enhancement to the event director. The demo UI update, Sandy just spoke to you about. So that's enhancements that we're doing to the demo UI to implement our latest features and something that we would like to keep doing at the moment. That one is being funded by Tazama directly. And then we want to start a formal AI journey for Tazama. AI as a benefit to any system isn't something that we can ignore. And it is something that we think we can extract specific value out of, but we do propose a measured and concise approach to AI so that we could use it in a way that actually makes sense. We don't want to just put AI on the tin. We want to use AI to the benefit of our customers and the system itself to achieve our strategic goals, which is to automate more and then ultimately also reduce costs. Out of that process, we expect that there will be a number of AI projects or components that we will deliver, but we don't know what that looks like yet. So we'll do our strategy first, first internally, and then as a community, and then out of that, we will start looking at delivery and also potentially drive that through funding and a business case-based approach where we can illustrate the potential benefits we hope to unlock and recruit somebody to fund the implementations. Batch processing is currently under specification, which brings to mind another feature of our approach to features development is Tazama will lead features development with a fully fledged business or functional requirement specification, and then take that specification to our community and then also try to secure development capacity and or funding amongst people who would be interested to deliver on that particular functionality. So the batch processing itself will follow that pattern. We are currently working on the requirement specification for that to deliver batch processing for historical data ingestion, both for catch-up ingestion as well as historical data take-on when you are deploying the system to a new environment. And then also we want to be able to do evaluations as part of that process or not, depending on your particular appetite during the batch processing implementation. This is also something that we raised internally. The next one up is resilience and recovery. We focused largely in Tazama on delivering functionality and features to implement the system and to make the system attractive to users. But we do also now want to embark on a program where we improve the robustness and resilience of the system and give us the tools to automatically recover from potential failures as part of our approach to automate more and cost less. Resilience and recovery is an important part of that approach. We don't know everything that will come out of that discovery first, so there will be specific deliverables that will be defined later, but that would all be under an umbrella of resilience and recovery. And then we're looking at our next phase in performance. So what that is going to look like, we also don't know, but that is on our roadmap and something that we want to approach. And then included in that is potentially a look at our architecture. To a certain perspective, some components of our architecture have maxed out the performance that they are capable of. We may be wrong, but we'll be testing that. So there may be some changes in the architecture. And one of the things that we also need to consider is if we want to do any kind of performance benchmarking or management at all, we need better observability and transparency over performance at the moment so that we could accurately identify bottlenecks in the system. At the moment, our logging capability hasn't been able to keep up quite as well with our evaluation performance itself, which made it very difficult for us to do performance benchmarking in our first phase. So we'll be looking at that as well. And then we have an open question around ArangoDB or not ArangoDB. We'll be exploring that a little bit. At the moment, ArangoDB is fine for what we are trying to do in our target market, but ArangoDB as a component of Tazama comes with some built-in constraints where it stops us from going into certain markets, and it also affects our status as a digital public good. Because ArangoDB is effectively, in certain instances, a paid-for product that has to be licensed, it contradicts the principles of the Digital Public Infrastructure and Digital Public Good Alliance. So that is something that we also either need to consider as give people a alternative option if they are deploying Tazama as a digital public good, or look at an alternative to ArangoDB altogether. The top half of these, as you can see on the right-hand side, there is no current budget set aside or funding proposed for any of these. So while we may go through and develop the designs, the requirement specifications, and everything else internally, no development here will take place until we are able to secure any budget or funding to deliver on any of these components. Where we do have more certainty in our delivery is around an upcoming implementation. For that implementation, we will be completing the configuration UI that has been on our roadmap before, and you would recognize it. There is an introduction of our Tazama security bounded context that we had delivered in Tazama 2.1, which will now be integrated into the config UI that we have already built. to complete that product as part of the upcoming implementation. And there's also an upgrade to our egress relay service just to add REST-based authentication as a protocol. At the moment, REST is unauthenticated in the egress relay service. We just need to also be able to send things to authenticated REST, and that would be in particular required by our own internal case management component and system. The next one up is quite a complex one. So we want to be able to create a software development kit to make integration with Tazama easier. So which means that you could use more configuration-based processes to add more types of data flows to the system, to handle the transformation of those data flows and connect them into Tazama's internal data model, and then also handle the routing and scheduling of that data inside the platform, and be able to, in addition to that, add integration into the system directly for data enrichment. So if you want to attach an external data source or a list of some kind to Tazama, at the moment you need to develop those interfaces through a complete SDLC cycle. We want to be able to put that as much as we can into an SDK to make that process simpler for our system integrators to implement Tazama in different kinds of environments and have less reliance on hard-coded data rails that we have to then maintain in the open source. So that SDK will be delivered as part of the implementation up front and then used in the implementation to handle the integration. So that is our vision for a software development kit there. And then speaking about the data, in addition to that, we would like to establish an architecture for data warehousing around Tazama. Tazama is very performance sensitive. So we don't want people to be running large data science queries as part of their investigation into a fraud alert over the operational data store and potentially drag the system to a halt because that query takes such a long time to run. It is better for Tazama and the performance inside the system for detection to protect that and encapsulate it in Tazama, but then we'll need a data warehousing component that sits adjacent to Tazama that can collect the historical data and the evaluation results out of Tazama, and also give an operator a platform where they can integrate additional data sources for enrichment. If they want to connect to their own client systems, if they want to connect to their own transaction systems for additional data, if they want to connect to external data sources, they should be able to do that through the data warehouse. The last one is technically a non-functional requirement, and you'll see that again shortly. But at the moment, Tazama itself is not architected for multi-tenancy. So before we can apply multi-tenancy to all of the new components in Tazama, we also have to build it into Tazama itself. So there we need to be able to give different tenants an opportunity to segregate their data flows all the way through Tazama, starting at the API, through the rule processors, which would then ring fence a particular customer's data queries to only their data, and then the submission or tagging of that data by tenant all the way through to the case and investigation management system. So that's an update that has to happen on the Tazama side. And once we have implemented in Tazama, we can then also use that segregation of data and processes in our downstream components. The red lines that you see on the image here are for dependencies. So some of the later components that we hope to deliver are dependent on some of the earlier components. So at the top, you will see the configuration UI will be completed, and then a rule builder UI will be added to that, which will help you to build a rule processor rather than having to develop one. We also want to construct an analytics portal once the data warehouse has been established so that you could run your data science queries, your regulatory reporting, your operational reporting, and your rules discovery, typologies discovery, and anomaly detection routines through the analytics portal. And then at the bottom, the really big one for us this year is a case and investigation management platform or a system. And that will handle all of the workflow around case management and also provide the tools for somebody to be able to effectively investigate an alert that comes out of Tazama so that you could confirm that the alert was valid, and also if not, and then whatever actions would be taken based on that downstream. And then just a little bit more about that. So we have non-functional requirements that apply to multiple aspects of the system. So API security and the security protocol that we have in place and implemented via Keycloak and our own abstraction should be applied to all interfaces that are being developed for Tazama going forward. So if there is the configuration UI, the rule builder user interface, the analytics portal, the case and investigation management system, all of those components need to utilize the Tazama API security bounded context. We also want to implement audit logging, and audit logging is again a pervasive requirement across the system. So all user interactions and system interactions need to be audit logged, and audit logging is not like normal logging. Audit logging has to be far more secure, more robust, and immutable. You shouldn't be able to ever change an audit log once it has been written. We are also faced with a large number of requirements around data protection, both for the protection of private information or personally identifiable information, but also data security in general, to make our system more secure and compliant with the minimum requirements for system security and data security. And then finally, multi-tenancy should now be a feature that is implemented in all Tazama components equally. So for our upcoming implementation, that would mean that all of these components will be subject to those non-functional requirements as well. That is, in a nutshell, our roadmap. Some things on this roadmap is more certain. So in our upcoming implementation, these are the features that we are working towards. For our nice to have features, and I don't want to call them that because some of these are really important. These are features that we are pursuing, but whether or not we will see them this year will be dependent on the mercy of our benefactors. Questions? Nobody? Is everybody still there?
Yes.
Thank
Well,
you.
at least I am.
I was getting worried.
You just covered it that well. So
But it's either that, Greg, or it's stunned silence. I don't know which
yeah,
I'd prefer
yeah,
at this
Well,
point.
yeah, there's a lot to unpack.
yeah, there is a lot. But he's right. It's all stuff that either comes with the implementations that customers have asked for. It's that kind of thing, and we'll take out. We can't either fund or we got no one to develop it, and we're working on all those things.
Exactly. Okay. Well, I think, Kenny, if there's nothing else, then that is back to you. I just want to double check. Did Scott manage to make it to the meeting?
He did, but he popped right off. I think he's having issues. He's in Uganda right now, folks, and they're having an Ebola outbreak, among other things. So I would imagine that that's problematic. I actually wanted to talk to him about that later today or probably this week sometime. Make sure he's
I
okay.
can give a quick update on the CI/CD. I won't be able to do it quite as well as Scott has. But we took our CI/CD working group through our presentation or our roadmap document. There's also a lot of ground to cover there. So we only got about halfway through that, and we'll continue that work in our next CI/CD working group session. But again, there also the focus is more on automation to increase our self-reliance, as it were, as a project, and also to make it a lot easier for people to implement Tazama itself. So I can't give you more of a tangible update than that, but that work group is continuing, and we still have a lot of work to do. And that is, I'm done now, Kenny.
Okay, Rob's hand
Oh,
went
Rob.
Yeah, it was a point, just as a general comment, there seem to be 3 definitions appearing in the world of what is an open AI. Open AIs, which is completely not open, the DeepSeek one, which is open weights, and then the other, which is truly open source. So when you use the term open source AI, we might need to qualify which one. OSI have their definition, which I think is probably best because of the financial data in it. But just so you're aware, it is bouncing around. There was a lot of discussion on that yesterday at the event.
That's the French one,
Thanks for
right?
that.
No, the OSINT definition, the French one is a truly open one. Open UK are pushing for a truly open one, which includes the data. And I keep flagging, cool, who wants their financial transaction data to be freely available to everybody?
Yeah.
Excellent. We've then got an open. So we are causing that, which is where the OSINT version is a good definition. So just to avoid all of the noise and confusion, because AI needs data to be trained, that becomes complex fast. So getting a clear statement will help a lot of the noise.
Yeah, just so you know, we see this more in the investigation side, in the triage side, versus the real-time engine side. We expect it'll interrogate the rules and things like that. So we thought about this. We don't have all the answers yet, and don't know where it's going 100%.
Okay, I'll share you a link
We'll
to the
figure
OS.
it out this year.
Yeah, it's one thing to just put in it's non-binary, and we're hence me not doing it. If you wanted to see Lucy working and have a laugh at its very funny bias towards the rugby and its complete lack of understanding of the rugby, then that I've just put the link from YouTube onto it. Has been shared already, so it's worth looking at just to get a sense of where Lucy has been created. Lucy, for those who are interested, is going to be trained to train people, which is an interesting approach.
And Rob, that was OSI definition that you recommend.
Yeah,
gravitate
I'll
to?
send a link through on that. I'll see. I'm trying to dig
Okay.
it out from the call, but if I can find it whilst we're still here, I will share it. But yeah, that seems to be the best one. I'm pushing back on those who want open all the data as well. Yeah, no.
Yeah, and they just call themselves OSI. To me, OSI is still a 7-layer network model, right? Which you're probably familiar with. It's not that. It's just a name.
We're not on the Aussie reference model. Come on, everyone wants the Aussie reference model.
Well, actually, that's an 8-layer model. The 8th layer is the political layer that no one ever talks about.
Yeah.
No, that one was so true.
Yeah.
Okay, that was it for today's scheduled agenda. If the floor is open, if anyone has anything else to add. Okay, hearing nothing, then with the TSE's permission, we'll go ahead and close out.
Thanks for that. And apologies, I seem
ahead.
to have been on mute while the dog was barking. Apologies.
Well, we're glad that it wasn't you that was barking. That's encouraging.
Thanks.
Okay, everybody. Good night, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you may be geographically, and we will see you again in 2 weeks.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Thanks all.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thanks.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.